operationalized once the US withdraws the tracking clause.
I am pleased that 6 years after we signed our bilateral agreement, we are moving towards commercial cooperation.
Today we achieved a breakthrough understanding on 2 issues that were holding up our ability to advance our civil nuclear cooperation, and we're committed to moving towards full implementation. And this is an important step that shows how we can work together to elevate our relationship.
After the nuclear deal breakthrough comes the political slugfest. The Congress now wants to claim credit for the civil nuclear deal, says Modi should be thankful to Sonia and Manmohan.
Well, this is a story that we began. This was a far-reaching decision under very difficult circumstances that we took when the 123 agreement, civil nuclear agreement, was signed with the United States of America during the time of President Bush.
Obama pledges support to India as a permanent member of the revamped Security Council. Hotlines to be established between both heads of state and security advisors. The president holds a state banquet in honor of Barack Obama. Over 250 dignitaries attending the largest such event so far at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Modi has chai pe charcha with Obama at the Hyderabad house. Breaches protocol to welcome the US president at the airport. Obama steals hearts with his Hindi.
Namaste. Thank you, Prime Minister Modi, for those very generous words. Mera pyar, bara namaskar.
A wary China keeps a close watch on Obama's historic India visit. Official think tank describes the trip aimed at containing China. Dress diplomacy plays a part too. Michelle Obama arrives in India wearing an outfit by an Indian designer. The government announces the Padma Awards ahead of Republic Day. BJP veteran L.K. Advani, superstar Amitabh Bachchan among those honoured with Padma Vibhushan. Country's second highest civilian honour. Also Dilip Kumar and Prakash Singh Badal will get the Padma Vibhushan. Okay, the latest visuals, of course, as we speak, are coming from the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where the US president is being given a banquet, an elaborate banquet, state banquet by the president, that is by Pranab Mukherjee. One by one, the guests are lining up and shaking hands with the US President. Najib Jung, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, is the latest who's shaking hands with the US President and Michelle Obama. Ghulam Nabi Azad, leader of the Congress Party in the upper house, is also there at that function at the moment. Several leaders from the world of business as well as from politics are there for this very special function which is being held for the US President at the moment. As we said, here in our studios, we have Ajay Shukla, Senior Defense Analyst with Business Standard, KC Singh, former diplomat with us, G. Parthasarthi, former High Commissioner to Pakistan, Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. Gentlemen, as I said, it's obvious none of you have, or me have been invited to the banquet, or you wouldn't be there in the television studios. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay,
we can confess to our lack of importance.
You can confess, you're retired, but you've seen it all. You've seen it all. You've seen many such presidential banquets and many such presidential visits. In the overall context, though, and Casey, you're the best perhaps to tell us this because you've served as president to a former president, to Zail Singh. How important are these events in terms of in the larger diplomatic framework? You know, the US president has several ceremonial engagements. Should this be treated purely as ceremonial in the context of all that else has happened today?
Look, those days, back in the 80s, there used to be a big banquet table, one large banquet table. So you're all seated on that. The numbers never used to be that large.
Yes.
So you had the VIP seated opposite each other and then in descending order. A speaker, Chief Justice and so on and so forth, and down to the ADCs at the end. But this is too large a number. You'll just shake hands and they'll probably be at round tables.
That's right.
So they can just cite the president. They'll hardly exchange any words with him. I mean, it looks like a great invite, but they're mostly there to see each other rather than President Obama and Michelle Obama.
You know, I take that. But is there a sense that, you know, is this an occasion in a sense to introduce the president to a variety of Indian civil society, which he otherwise won't meet. He'd otherwise only meet the powerful politicians and diplomats and possibly bureaucrats. This is an occasion for him to meet representatives of civil society as well, isn't it?
More than that, I think, really, I wouldn't attach too much diplomatic importance to that. It is to honor prominent members of different facets of life in India, that even in an international event, we recognize you. That is about it. And the President also, at best, gets to understand that there's a wide cross-section of society, not just in government, who are respected. I mean, for example, in the White House banquets, you have everybody from Hollywood stars to various other people, company honchos, all coming in. So.
In fact, I was told that you've got a lot of corporate czars there who are supposed to, at least, who have been invited from Bollywood. We were told Amir Khan and Amitabh Bachchan were to be invited. We are not sure whether they are eventually being able to make the visit to Rashtrapati
Navy
Bhavan.
Chief, Army Chief.
The Navy Chief, the Army Chief. So it's an occasion for him to know who's who. But as you say, it's all reduced eventually to a photo.
Just a handshake.
So it's a handshake.
Comes into yet another official function, whereas, as Mr. Parthasarathi was saying, it's actually an opportunity to introduce the dignitary to the range and the glittering society of the capital city as you have.
Not just capital, from all over the country.
Okay, so
you go to Washington, for example, there's a very good chance you'll bump into Beyonce Knowles at the banquet. But over here, it will only be the Army Chief.
Okay, as I said,
there are certain established practices when there are visiting heads of state. If you don't give this kind of an honor and hold a banquet for a visiting president or prime minister on an official or state visit, this is a slight. You have to show him respect and courtesy, and this is part of that. It is a gesture.
Okay.
But beyond that, it's not as if he's going to meet people and discuss with people or get to know them or remember them.
It's not going to happen. So
if there's a prime minister, then the dinner used to be by the prime minister and lunch by the president.
Dinner by the Prime Minister and lunch by the President.
If the visiting dignitary was a Prime Minister, that used to be the norm. And if it's a President, then the banquet by the President and lunch by the Prime Minister.
Okay,
so this is the normal thing.
I'm going to sort of let the viewers digest all those pictures. They can identify all the powerful who are coming in for that function. But I want to turn to also the politics of it, which is what we and the meat of what has happened today. The meat is that the civil nuclear deal, we are told, is a done deal now. There doesn't seem to be any. That's the message that we are getting from our reporters, from diplomats, from what we heard from the press conference. And I'm now looking at the political fallout of it, which is being expressed. Aman Sinha of the BJP and Ajay Kumar are spokespersons of the Congress and BJP. Lisa Curtis is joining me from Washington. She's with the Asian Studies Center there at the Davis Institute for National Security. And for a moment, I just want to go to them just to try and understand this from each one of you out there. Whether you see this as a credit game. I want the two politicians to settle this once and for all. Ajay Kumar, at a moment when the Indian Prime Minister and the US President can legitimately claim forward movement to the deal being done, why is the Congress saying, what about Manmohan Singh, what about Sonia Gandhi? I can even understand Manmohan Singh. Why are you wanting to give credit to Sonia Gandhi today? Ajay Kumar? Why this insistence on giving credit to Sonia Gandhi?
Rajdeep, first of all, due credit to the government of India for... can you hear me, Rajdeep?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
So first question, Rajdeep, is, I think the twist is inappropriate. The fact is that want to congratulate the government of India for... I want to congratulate the government of India for completing this, the formalities, what's available in the domain. But we need to understand that all relationships start off with whether it is Narasimha Rao, Prime Minister Vajpayee, whether Mr. Manmohan Singh. It's a long road, and getting the nuclear deal. I mean, I think Mr. Manmohan Singh, it would be graceful for everybody to accept that Mr. Manmohan Singh was the basic driver for the civil nuclear deal, and we staked our government on that. So closing it, operationalizing it is great. But the fact is that 90% of the work was done, 10% was completed, we accepted, and we definitely congratulate the government of India and the Prime Minister on that issue. But not to recognize that all achievements in international sphere is a long-term, it takes a long-term relationship building. So neither is it a big story for the Bharatiya Janata Party or
why are you so upset that Sonia Gandhi is not being recognized? I can understand.
Would be appropriate.
No, hold on, Dr. Ajay Kumar. No, Dr. Ajay Kumar, let's be clear. Narasimha Rao was the one who opened up.
Look,
Narasimha Rao was the one who opened up India to the United States in the 90s. I never hear congressmen are giving credit to Narasimha Rao. But you want Sonia Gandhi to be given credit today.
One sec. Now, if Rajdeep had said it, that Mr. Narasimha Rao, Mr. Vajpayee, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and Mrs. Gandhi for the fact that she was the leader of the UPA chairman. So if you're going to, disassociate and say that, look, the government of the UPA government, the chairperson was there, and she was without, I think, Mrs. Gandhi and the party support in pushing and getting the other stakeholders. So let's be graceful. I don't think, we are nitpicking on this issue. And the fact is that Prime Minister Modi has been able to close it. The details are still not available, but and we congratulate them. But 90%, I would expect some more grace from Aman and the team is to accept that 90% of the job was done during the UPA time. There were issues and the issues in the nuclear liability, unfortunately.
Hold on, Ajay Kumar. You're saying 90% of the credit should go to the Congress.
It's happened.
Aman Sinha, is the NDA today or the Prime Minister willing to give credit to Manmohan Singh to say that this is part of a continuum? What we are seeing today is part of a continuum?
No, Rajdeep, to the extent that foreign policy and diplomacy is a continuous process and all our governments take it ahead, that is absolutely correct, and Government of India needs to be congratulated for that. And therefore, the crucial day was today, Rajdeep, that despite this deal being signed, it was not operationalized or implemented because there were several significant obstacles in the way. And the personal chemistry and friendship of Prime Minister Modi and President Obama led to removing of those obstacles, where on request of Prime Minister Modi, President Obama waived the tracking clause, which was we felt was intrusive and was violating our sovereignty, so to speak.
Are you willing to give credit to Dr. Singh?
That was waived off by the US President.
Are you willing to give credit to Dr. Singh as the one who really pushed and staked his government on this issue?
No, Rajdeep, I have said what I have said. No, we are willing to give credit to each and every person who deserves it. That is not the point. The point that I am making is that despite this deal being there on paper, it was not operationalized and implemented, and it was Prime Minister Modi's initiative, his dynamism, which led to him persuading President of USA, President Obama, to waive off the tracking clause, which was the most important hurdle, because it led to an inspection regime being imposed on our military reactors also. We successfully managed that, and I think for that some credit should go to Prime Minister Modi rightfully. And the way he persuaded President Obama. But let me just, for a minute, if you can just allow me to give.
No, just a minute. Just a minute. I just for a moment want to also go to Lisa Curtis. There are questions over the tracking clause and how you're interpreting it. But I want to go to Lisa Curtis there in Washington. How will Washington see this, Lisa Curtis? Is it being seen as a milestone?
Well, I think it's seen as a major breakthrough. This is a significant achievement. I think everybody is surprised that the two sides were able to come to this agreement over the civil nuclear deal. I mean, these are issues that have been hanging up the deal for nearly 5 years. So the fact that these two leaders were able to come to this agreement is, I think, what is the important thing. Of course, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh contributed significantly to this agreement. His government, he staked his government on the issue. His government almost fell over the issue. So certainly he deserves credit. Also, former President Bush was the one who initiated this agreement. Right. But I think the important thing is by accomplishing this breakthrough, both President Obama and Prime Minister Modi are owning the agreement now. because there were also concerns that the Obama administration was not as invested in the civil nuclear deal initially. So what they're showing is both sides are owning this deal. It's important to the overall relationship, and I think, you know, that should be the focus. That we have a major breakthrough. Everybody knew that this visit would be symbolically important. The first time a U.S. president has attended India's Republic Day celebration. Well, now we see that this visit is substantively important because this is a major breakthrough. This is an issue that the two sides have been grappling with for over 5 years. And it says a lot about the commitment of these two leaders to the overall relationship and their willingness to transcend bipartisan issues in both of their domestic politics in the greater good of the overall India-U.S. relationship.
Let me take that to our panel. You know, so since many of you have just joined us this evening after having spent most of the morning with us, are you surprised that the deal has been signed? Are you surprised that the deal is done?
We were saying that the whole morning.
You were saying, no, Kamal Sibal was skeptical.
I was saying it the whole morning.
Kamal Sibal was skeptical in the morning whether the deal would be done. You're still skeptical.
I told you 2 or 3 things.
Yes.
One is that in the joint statement, there is no reference to the deal at all.
I'm looking at the joint statement.
There is no reference.
At all.
There is no specific reference to the deal. You're right.
At all.
Yes.
This was in the press conference of the Foreign Secretary. Some details were given.
No. Even when the two leaders spoke to the media, they said that we have
understanding.
An understanding has been reached.
But this has not been reflected in the joint statement, which means there is still work to do. There's some kind of an document agreement still has to be signed, which will finalize and clinch the deal. Otherwise, it would have figured in the joint statement.
Also importantly, correct me if I'm wrong, that the two companies with which who will actually be part are Japanese companies, if I'm not mistaken, and we don't still have a deal with the Japanese.
That is not an issue. It's an American issue, company with Japanese majority holding.
That's right. So do we need a deal with Japan for that?
No. But one more point.
Yes.
What the Additional Secretary or Joint Secretary concerned said in the press conference is very important.
Yes.
It has to be understood, and it's not very clear what the implication is. He said, in effect, that we are adhering to the 123 agreement as well as our arrangement with the IAEA, and that the agreement with Canada is the template.
Right.
Now, this raises quite a few questions. And these are not yet clarified. But if we have sorted out these questions,
it's a milestone. You accept.
Kudos to both sides.
Yes, Ajay, you want to point out
something? While there's nothing on the joint statement, the White House has put out a statement.
Yes.
And it's quoted the ambassador to India, Richard Verma, as saying, we came to an understanding of the liability issue. It will operate through a memorandum of law within the Indian system. And it is not something that would require at this stage a legislative undertaking, which means that the Indians have put in place the entire mechanism. The United States has not had to make any concessions or any sort of things. And we've put in place basically that insurance backup pool that is required.
I think it goes slightly beyond. It goes slightly beyond. It goes slightly beyond, in the sense that there was always some ambiguity about the law of tort applying, and that was worrisome to the Americans. That has been clarified. So the memorandum they are talking about will no doubt also have to make clear our understanding.
Partha, and Casey, maybe for an average viewer who wants to know what is this milestone, is it going to result in an immediate transfer of technology? Is it going to result?
Could I add one thing before Casey comes on?
Yes.
Look,
no.
It's not. Look, no. All that is going to happen is once this is signed.
Yes.
Or put the legal documents required for this is put in place. That is not too complicated. It could be done soon enough. It then becomes a question of the commercial viability of whatever you're doing. And please believe me, whether it is in negotiations with France or whether it's negotiations with the US, they're telling me to get their reactors to produce electricity at costs we want is not an easy exercise.
The Prime Minister.
So this is you believe it's a very important
It is what we call as an enabling arrangement.
You know, the Prime Minister himself, when in his press statement, talked about technical and commercial viability, and I thought that was very wise of him. It's not as if this has been done. It will all depend on negotiations and technical and commercial viability. So this is a caveat which is extremely important.
Yes, Casey, sorry.
See, what they've done is basically what was keeping the companies away was their liability for products, the technology and products they provided to India on an indefinite basis. Their argument was once we give it, then after that, it's the user or it is the operator who takes it, not the seller. Now, what we are doing is we are having 4 public sector insurance companies set up a fund in India and build a cushion for any future liability. Essentially, therefore, you are passing it on to the Indian taxpayer. They are not taking it on. And they will probably add it to the cost of the project. Because if they're buying insurance, they'll add to the cost of the project.
That's interesting that all of you, because of your expertise, are putting in various cautionary riders, because there's a tendency to get euphoric, as we often do. But it's interesting to see how the political parties are reacting, because Aman Sinha, when the BJP was in the opposition, you opposed the nuclear deal, if you remember, in the year 2008, and the Congress should also be using this opportunity to give credit to an Atal Bihari Vajpayee. It was not just Manmohan Singh, it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee also who played his own role in pushing through this entire process to the stage where we've reached. I think a series of Indian Prime Ministers, from Narasimha Rao to Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Manmohan Singh to today Narendra Modi, deserve credit for staying the course despite oppositions at various times.
The course is still some more length to run.
The course is...
Electricity is generated.
Okay, there's still some way to go before electricity is generated. I'm going to take a break at this point. When we return, we're going to look at the other important question that this joint statement raises, particularly what it says about terrorism and Pakistan, or really the neighborhood, as it puts it. We're going to take a look at that. Has India got enough when it comes to counter-terrorism? Where does this agreement take us on issues of security? Back in a moment. Namaste, Obama. Of course, the big takeaway is the progress that has been made on the civil nuclear deal. Our experts are saying, don't say it's a done deal till we know that electricity is actually being generated in the manner that we would like to see. At the moment, there could be still clauses, as are being suggested by Kamal Sibal here, that need to be ironed out. Let's take a look at another aspect of this joint statement, which is the commitment to counter-terrorism and dealing with terrorism in the neighborhood as well. Ajay, as you see this statement, you seem to be suggesting that this statement is virtually a repeat of what the two leaders had committed to in September of 2014 when they met in Washington. They speak about the threat posed by groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL. They speak about calls for eliminating terrorist safe havens, disrupting terrorist networks, identify Lashkar, Jaish, D Company and the Haqqani network. Do you believe it's just the same ditto to what was said 4 months ago?
It's almost practically identical to the September statement, but that is not to say that it has no meaning. It is still a reiteration of the US commitment to support India in at least mitigating the effects of these Pakistan-based groups. To that extent, it's to be welcomed. I mean, to what extent they're in a position to take it forward, to tighten the screws on Pakistan, I mean, that's an open question, right?
And interestingly, in the break, you were pointing out, Casey, that they've not mentioned the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. Specifically, they've not mentioned the Jamaat-ud-Dawa. They've mentioned Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Looks like an omission.
Do you believe it's an omission?
It's an omission by mistake.
Are you saying that the Pakistanis tomorrow will say that Hafiz Saeed is a leader of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, not Lashkar-e-Toiba?
No, Kerry has cast. John Kerry has cast.
The Pakistanis are already saying that, but in that sense, you believe this is an omission?
Certainly, it should be there, because that's the
success. Should it have been there?
It should have been there as it should have been there as JDOD, because Pakistan itself had banned Lashkar. But I have a more serious concern, which we discussed this morning, about the footseeing between the Americans and the Taliban. If you notice, they have named the Haqqani network, but not the Mullah Omar-led Taliban. The Americans are cutting a deal and trying to broker it with the Pakistan.
Are you still saying that
absolutely
good Taliban and bad Taliban as far as the Americans are concerned?
No. The Americans are, they don't call them the good Taliban.
They won't, but I'm saying
they are getting the, after all, when they talk of a process of political reconciliation to be facilitated by the Pakistanis, that process of reconciliation is between Afghan Taliban and the Americans. In the
press statement today, President Obama acknowledged that India would have an important role to play in Afghanistan.
Economic role to play, but the political, so-called political reconciliation process will be Pakistan driven. Pakistan continues to hold the strings on the Afghan government, and given the fact the Americans have not acknowledged the Afghan Taliban, which has killed 2,000 of their soldiers as a terrorist organization, because they are a part of facilitating this process between the Taliban and the Afghan government for a process to bring the Taliban into the democratic mainstream.
Can I for a moment see if Lisa Curtis is still with us in Washington? If Lisa Curtis is still with us in Washington and can respond to what Mr. Parthasarathi is saying, the Americans not going far enough in identifying the Taliban more specifically.
Yeah, I really wouldn't have the same interpretation. First, in dealing with the issue of Jamaat al-Dawa and the fact that it was not raised in the joint statement, I think we have to recognize that it's implied that Jamaat al-Dawa is indeed a front organization from the for the Lashkar-e-Taiba. So I don't think it makes any difference that JUD is not specifically mentioned because it's implied. Everybody knows that JUD is a front organization for the LET. So I don't see that as an issue. And when it comes to the Afghan Taliban, I think that the previous speaker is reading too much into the fact that the Afghan Taliban is not mentioned either. Certainly the U.S. is supporting the Afghan government in fighting the Taliban. And when it comes to U.S.-India joint cooperation, I think they're focusing on the LET, the Haqqani network, these groups, and I don't think that it makes a difference that the Afghan Taliban is not mentioned specifically, because of course India doesn't have troops. India does not have troops on the ground.
Mr. Parthasarathi wants to respond quickly.
Lisa, for quite some time, the U.S. has trying to establish a linkage with the Taliban, starting with the Qatar office. The U.S. is supporting a process of so-called national reconciliation between the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government, really brokered by the Pakistanis. I mean, and the U.S. has been reluctant, even though it declared the Taliban as a terrorist organization, to any longer refer to the Afghan Taliban as a terrorist organization.
Okay, so you have your concern. Let me take a pause button. My producers will insist that I take a pause button at this point. When we return, we're going to look at Mr. Modi himself.